All right, and this just in, we have a final out of the Orange Bowl where Oregon has knocked off Texas Tech 23-0 in the college football playoff quarterfinal. The Ducks punched their ticket to the Peach Bowl in Atlanta, where they're going to take on the winner of today's Rose Bowl between Indiana and Bama. For Texas Tech, closing the books on their first trip to the CFP, and they're also just the latest team to lose the CFP after having a first-round bye. Those teams are now 0-6 since the field expanded in the 2024 season. All right, let's recap it and have a discussion with our college football analyst, Tom Fornelli. Tom, Oregon wins, and that means that all teams with an opening round bye, 0-6 all time, 0-2 this season. But if you guys don't follow Tom Fornelli on X, you absolutely should, because he is a great follow. And we also love to reference some of your tweets, because you don't necessarily think this is a bye situation in terms of the Orange Bowl. It was more of a matchup situation, right?
Yeah, I think for this game, if you look at stylistically, you can argue Texas Tech's offense looked, rusty. But the fact is, Texas Tech's offense has looked like that all year. They've been very boom or bust. They are big plays, and then they have trouble putting together those little 4 or 5 yard plays to keep drives going, what we typically refer to as success rate statistically. Oregon defensively has been one of the best defenses in the country this year at taking big plays away from teams, and they did that here today against Texas Tech. They did not get the big plays they are accustomed to getting. I don't think that has anything to do with the bye. I just think that Oregon was a bad matchup for them. And just if you look at the picture overall, yeah, teams that have byes are 0-6. But what else is in common with those 6 losses? That 5 of the teams that lost those games were underdogs in the game. Miami is the only underdog that was to win after coming off the bye. Ohio State was the favorite in last night's game. That's the first time that has happened. So when I look at that record, yeah, it's interesting, and it's something that's worth monitoring. But I really don't think it's that big of a deal. I don't think the bye has been the problem. I think last year it was the format where 2 of the teams that got the byes were Boise State and Arizona State. They lost to Penn State and Texas, 2 teams they were big underdogs to. And then this year you've just seen last night there was the upset, but Oregon was favored to beat Texas Tech in that game this afternoon. So I don't think the byes have anything to do with it.
Okay, I'm going to put a pause on the bye conversation, but we're going to circle back to it at the very end. But want to talk about Oregon and their offense, because this game went into half 6-0 with Oregon up and not even getting in the end zone, right? So do you have any concerns for this Oregon's offense here? Despite, started moving a little bit with Dante Moore towards the end, but do you have any concerns moving forward in the CFP based off of what you saw for the entire game from that offense?
I do, because last week, Oregon clearly had a very easy time moving the ball against James Madison. They were simply overpowering the Duke's defense. They were too talented for them to be able to keep up with them in coverage. And then today we saw a very different story against a Texas Tech team that has one of the best defensive lines in the country, if not the best defensive line. But if you look at the numbers and statistics of what Oregon was able to do here, they averaged only 1.4 yards per carry on the ground. They were not able to run the ball. Dante Moore, you look at the 26 for 33 part, and you're like, okay, that's pretty good. But the 7.1 yards per attempt is very low for him on the year. It was a lot of dinking and dunking. He had the 1 interception, no touchdown throws. I just feel like Oregon offensively did not look crisp in this game at all. And if the problem was going up against a very good Texas Tech defensive line, well, guess what? In the next round, you're going to be facing either an Indiana defense with a terrific front 7 or an Alabama defense with a good front 7. And then if you somehow get past them, you're probably looking at Georgia or Miami, 2 other teams who have terrific front 7. So I think that is a problem that could loom large for the Ducks. If they play like they did today on offense in the next round, they're probably not going to win. So I think that's the one thing they need to really address. Their defense bailed them out big time today.
Yeah, it only gets harder as this thing moves on, as you alluded to. I want to get to Texas Tech, because hats off to them, a heck of a run. What do you think this team is going to look like, and how difficult is it going to be to get back to this place next season for the Red Raiders?
Yeah, clearly, you lose this game like the way you did, getting shut out for the first time. It's a bitter way to end the year. But if you're a Texas Tech fan, you should still be optimistic about where this program is headed, because you're still at the beginning of the journey. Yes, they pumped a lot of money into this defense this year, and it paid off. They won the Big 12 and they got to the playoff. But they don't have the complete roster that it takes to win in a format like this, in which you have to win 3 games. But if they want to look at a good example of what's possible, Look at what happened last night with Miami. When Mario Cristobal first got to Miami, he was in a very similar situation to where Texas Tech is right now. You start building along the lines of scrimmage, and then you work your way out until you get to a complete team. Texas Tech has the lines of scrimmage figured out. They've got great players on it now. They've got a bunch of 5-stars committed in their recruiting class that'll be there in the years to come. Now begins the process of building out to getting the running backs, getting the receivers, getting the quarterback, which was a glaring problem in this matchup going forward. So Texas Tech will be a powerhouse in the Big 12 next year. I won't be shocked at all if they win the league again and they're right back in the college football playoff. It's really hard to do what Texas Tech did just to get to this point. So thinking that they were going to be able to make a deep run in the very first year of this process, you were asking a whole heck of a lot, and they almost did it.
Yeah, and let's circle back to the whole bye conversation. As mentioned, teams with the bye 0-2 so far this season in the CFP. We know the Rose Bowl is on deck with Bama and IU. Do you have any concern for IU, a team that, yes, they're undefeated, they look very dominant, they're favored in this matchup against Alabama, but they haven't played since the Big Ten championship on December 6th?
I have concern more for the weather than I do for the time off because of the rain in Pasadena. This game, a lot of these games that we're seeing now, even the outdoor ones, they're played on, like turf. Pasadena is not turf. It is actual grass and mud. And the wetter that gets, the crazier things are going to get, the worse your footing's going to get. So I'm not so much worried about the bye as much as I'm worried about slipping and sliding all over the field. That said, if Indiana comes out and looks horrible offensively, maybe there really is something to the bye. But I've been saying to people, I'll really start buying into this theory if Ole Miss comes out tonight and blows the doors off of Georgia. Because if Alabama beats Indiana, I know it's an upset, but it's still Alabama beating Indiana. It's not really that shocking of a result if it happens. If Ole Miss does it to Georgia, then I'll start paying attention to it.
Okay, so a couple more outcomes, and then we'll see Tom start, putting out something else on X. If we get back to Oregon, right, these questions are so tough. Who would you rather face? Indiana or Alabama? Who would you rather face if you're Oregon? Either way, as we mentioned, it's going to be a tough matchup.
I think I'd rather face Alabama, which, again, that is a wild thing to be sitting there and saying when you're asking, hey, which football team would you rather play, Indiana or Alabama? Yeah, Alabama. They just seem easier. They're not as good as the Indiana Hoosiers. And I think it's because offensively, Alabama's very one-handed. They cannot run the ball. They have not been able to run the ball effectively all season. So you don't really have to worry about that. And you look at Oregon and what they do defensively and the way that they limit big plays, if they can leave an extra guy out of the box and drop him back in coverage and force Ty Simpson to pick him apart, I think they feel very comfortable. Against Indiana, they won't have that ability to do so because they have the best quarterback in the country, but they also have a very good run game to go with it. So it makes your life a whole heck of a lot more difficult defensively. And on the other side, Indiana has a terrific front seven. They take away the run game. And we saw today, Oregon struggled to run the ball. Therefore, Oregon struggled to move the ball, period. So I think matchup-wise, I would much rather face Alabama, even though I already lost to Indiana earlier this season, because, again, we've seen a lot. Sometimes rematches, it's hard to beat a team twice in the same season because the losing team often learns a lot more than the winning team does.
You know what? If this was like 4 or 5 years ago and I was looking into the future at this segment saying who would you rather play, Alabama or Indiana, I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Obviously I'd rather face Indiana, but hey, that's what the day and age we're living in college football. Tom, we certainly appreciate it, giving us an Orange Bowl recap, also what's ahead for Oregon. They get the dub over Texas Tech 23-0 and advance to the next round in the CFP. You can hear Tom, by the way, on the Cover 3 podcast. The guys are always breaking down the very latest headlines, everything, recaps happening in college football. You can watch right now by scanning that QR code on your screen.
Back here on CBS Sports HQ, where the Oregon Ducks are your Orange Bowl champions. They get it done by shutting out Texas Tech 23-0 to advance to the college football playoff semifinals. For much more on this, let's go ahead and welcome in our guys, Chip Patterson and Danny Kanell, who had a front row seat to this one from Miami. Guys, great to see you. Before we get into what we just saw play out in front of both of you, we just had Tom Fornelli on, and we asked him this. We want to get both of your perspectives as well. With the Rose Bowl about to kick off from Pasadena, any concern about Indiana? They haven't played since the Big Ten championship game. That was December 6th. An interesting note, teams who are 0-6 coming off a bye dating back to last season, or are 0-6 dating back to last season, excuse me. What's the concern level, if any, Danny?
I think it's like it started to become a trend, right? But Oregon was the favorite today, so that wasn't too shocking. You know, Miami last night, did they catch some momentum? Possibly. But I'm used to playing. We had 31, 32 days before our last game, before we played a national championship game. I think it's a trend that is worth considering, but I don't think it's the be-all, end-all. I think you'll see that trend, that streak broken at some point, whether it's the Rose Bowl or the Sugar Bowl tonight. But I do think it's something that coaches are starting to take note of. But I still think, Chip, if you asked every head coach, would you rather have extra time to get healthy or to keep playing to try to get the momentum? I think most coaches still would say, give me the time to get players back healthy.
I think there is some concern. I think that I was not ready to jump on this when it was, but it was Arizona State, it was Boise State. They had the 3 and 4 seed, they had the bye, but they were not the number 3 and number 4 teams in the country. I think that looking at this game, again, like you mentioned, Oregon was favored, so you can't automatically say that we were stunned by the fact that one of these teams got to play. But uniquely, Alabama is in a position that I think Miami was, where they not only got to play, but had to play on the road. So it was going out, getting out of your comfort zone, getting the blood going, pads popping a little bit. So, yeah, I do think that Alabama, for example, if they get off to a little bit of a hot start, I might be willing to say that. I am not willing to say that overall the record as it stands now, 0-6, because of what we had last year with different seeding, is a trend that we can apply for years moving forward. But I do think that it is something that is an advantage for the team that has played, particularly these teams that have played on the road and experienced the discomfort that you get from a hostile environment.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, Chip. We'll find out soon enough, you guys. 20 minutes from now, kickoff from the Rose Bowl. Let's get to the game, though, that you all were at the Orange Bowl. It felt like Oregon played with their food a little bit today. They won the game. They shut out the Red Raiders, but it didn't feel like a championship quality performance. Chip, are you concerned for the Ducks after what you saw from them today?
I think if anything, offensively, the struggles to me come back to Texas Tech being amazing defensively, limiting what they were able to do in terms of trying to push the ball down the field. I think that Dante Moore had a couple of throws that he might like back when he goes back to check it. But I looked at the way that Oregon was going into this game. They were running the football, not necessarily with a lot of production, but almost as a mentality. Let's lean on these guys, because as much as we talk about David Bailey and Lee Hunter and Romello Height, who can tell me about the second stringers? Who can tell me about the third stringers? Now, are you going to be able to test Texas Tech's depth? And truthfully, Jordan, there is a point as a coach when you realize they ain't scoring on us, and Texas Tech's shortcomings offensively were exposed in a big way in this game. A top 10 offense in terms of scoring and total offense on the season, but I think that there were two sides in this game that might have been a little smoke and mirrors, and it was Texas Tech's offense and Oregon's defense. Texas Tech's offense was exposed. Oregon's defense, which just gave up 31 to James Madison, answered the call. So I do think that there is something to be cleaned up from the Ducks, but I still think that in terms of the way they tilted this game in their favor, that's sometimes what champions need to do in a tournament run.
So I totally get it. Like, I looked at Oregon. The game itself was a little bit sloppy. They kind of, it's a great point. Played with their food a little bit. But I think the one thing that's really impressive is the Oregon defense. Yeah. For them to pitch a shutout and to have the performance they did was super solid. And that was something they were tired of hearing of Texas Tech's defense, the Oregon defense. And they wanted to show what they were capable of, and they did by pitching a shutout. The offense, a little bit sloppy, a little bit sluggish. Here's what I would say if I was Dan Lanning, and the thing that why I'm not ready to hop off the Oregon bandwagon, I picked them to win the national championship. They have room for improvement. Yep. Like, if you can win and win ugly, which they've done, James Madison, they probably could have rolled out of bed with second stringers and still won the game. But they didn't play their best on defense. They got better. On offense, they didn't play great today, but they can get better. So that's the thing to me, is where some of these teams like Miami, that might have been their best performance last night. They played great. Oregon is winning without playing their best. So if they get their best, that's what they're going to have to do to win the national championship, or have even advanced to the championship game. But I still think they have it in them. I think Dan Lanning as a coaching staff have plenty of work to do, that they can go point out some of the areas they need to improve. So I still think there's a lot of upside for Oregon.
Just a follow-up, Danny, because we know Oregon is your pick to win the national championship. Is your concern level, or your confidence level, rather, different after seeing them play today?
Yes, I think so. Like,
yeah.
I'm definitely a little bit hesitant. I'm kind of talking myself into it. But I do think, like, remember Tiger Woods used to win? He's like, I had my C-plus game today, and everybody was, like, ticked off, like, you still, like, smoke the field. They still won 23-0.
Right.
Like, they still, it never really felt like Texas Tech had a chance. So I think that's what kind of makes Oregon scary, is that if they are at their best, they can go out and be a team that probably should have won 49-0. They just didn't. So I think there's still something in the tank for Oregon that maybe they're saving. Now, you'd like to be peaking now and getting better, so it does have some concern, but I still feel pretty good about the Ducks. The offensive and defensive lines still pretty stout, and as Chip mentioned, Texas Tech's defense is really good. Like, we don't want to take away from them, and they were still able to find ways to move the football.
And Danny, like, don't forget, everybody else in this playoff, who has a perfect resume?
Right.
Like, there are no monsters that are left. We thought Ohio State was the monster, and Miami just slayed them and kicked them out of the tournament. Even Indiana had to come back against Penn State. Didn't look good on the road against Iowa. So, yeah, everyone's got some flaws, which, as a fan of college football, I think makes it a little bit fun.
Well, they'll get to showcase a little bit more as they're headed to the college football playoff semifinal. Guys, moments away from the Rose Bowl, getting underway from Pasadena. You know, it was funny. Jacqueline was saying that just 4 years ago, right, this question would just be absolutely insane. But I'm going to ask it now because it's relevant. Who do you think Oregon would rather play in the next round, Chip? Bama or Indiana?
And this sounds insane, and Jacqueline would agree, but I think the answer is Alabama. Because Indiana was the team that came into your house, punched first, caused problems for you, and as much as it's hard to beat a team twice, I just think that there are more flaws and imperfections that they could exploit against the Crimson Tide than they could if having to face Indiana again.
Yeah, I think I would agree to you, especially what we saw in Eugene. Like, that was their home. Now, Dan Lanning might say, hey, we want another chance at that game.
As
We're
a competitor.
Yeah, we want to see that team. I do think Indiana, there's a reason that once Ohio State was bounced, Indiana is the favorite, and there's a reason why Alabama is the last team on the odds makers' chance to win the national championship. Either way, I think the most fun part about this tournament that we're seeing is the margin between the top from Indiana all the way to the bottom of Alabama is not that large, man. It is slim. The margins are really tight, which is what it should be when you get to this point in the season. So I think any one of these teams, if they put it together for 2 or 3 more games, then all of a sudden you're looking at what could be a surprise national champion. And I think in this case, it would be Alabama, which is crazy considering we're talking Indiana, Alabama, and Alabama could be the surprise.
Guys, we'll leave it there. Incredible analysis, as always. Get home safe. Always great to see you here on CBS Sports HQ. The Rose Bowl on deck, but the Orange Bowl in the books. The Oregon Ducks are your 2025 Orange Bowl champs, getting it done in dominant fashion against Texas Tech, 23-0, advancing to the college football playoff semifinals.